And in this period, in Sicily, we had a pure Arabic architecture. People were speaking Arabic, mostly. The population was Christian, part Islamic, and part Hebrew. For example, if you Sicilian people, they think that the best period of their own history was probably the Greek time and the Arabic time.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you all for joining us today. We are very honored to have with us Luca Fortis, who is a cultural journalist, a travel writer, and a storyteller whose work spans from Italy's hidden corners to the complex and vibrant landscapes of the Middle East. His writing, without further ado, I will request Mr. Luca to please begin his presentation. Thank you.
I would like to start telling thanks really to everyone. I want to start telling something that generally when people think about Middle East, Asia, and I would say also Islamic culture and European culture, generally people think they are two separate cultures. Especially in a world like that where people like to make division is something that we will listen a lot. But I would start to say that from my point of view is not completely true this. For two different reasons. First of all, we shared for a lot of centuries the same landscape and the same I would say lands, because when we speak about Mediterranean, I'm living now in Napoli, for example. Napoli was a Greek colony before to become Rome, okay, Roman, and south of Italy was part of Greece, exactly as a lot of Greece used to have a lot of colonies, for example, in Egypt, in Syria, and in a lot of places in Mediterranean. Also, the Phoenician culture from North Africa used to have a lot of colonies in south of Italy, for example, in Sicily, in Sardinia, and also during the period of the Roman Empire, we were always all the same. North Africa and what is actually Syria, Lebanon, Turkey were part of the same country. And after, during the Byzantine Empire, it was the same. South of Italy was part of the Byzantine Empire, for example, Napoli, not all, but part of them, the coast mostly. For this, it was in the same country than Greece, for example, or than Constantinople, or than Syria. During the first caliphate, Sicily was a caliphate too. For this, Mediterranean was kind of, the Romans were saying Mare Nostrum. It was an internal, like a lake, more or less, where people was trading from one part to the other one. For this influenced a lot. And also, from a religious point of view, if I was a Chinese, for example, I would have big problems to understand the difference between Islam, Christianism, and the Hebrew religion. Because for a Chinese, they have a completely different way of belief, but what are for us differences between Christians, Islamic, and Jewish? Yeah, there are very small differences for someone that is not part of this religion. But it's generally we have a lot of share and different small differences somehow. This was important to me to say initially because it will help to understand. The first things I want to speak is about the Islamic Caliphate in Sicily from 800 after Jesus Christ. This caliphate Sicily was a caliphate until 1091. And in this period, in Sicily, we had a pure Arabic architecture, okay? And we had also people were speaking Arabic, mostly. They became part Islamic, part Christian. Sorry, part of the population was Christian, part Islamic, and part Hebrew. And but the interesting point of view for us that is it's not easy to study that architecture, because nowadays we don't have anymore any buildings that are really true from that period, except this bath that is this is an hammam from Cefaladiana. That is the only pure Arabic architecture we still have. Historians were trying to understand how this is possible, because we had a lot of Arabic historian or geographic from that time that were writing about Sicily, and they were saying that Palermo was a city, for example, Palermo was the capital from the Caliphate, was a city with more than hundreds and hundreds of minarets, and is nothing left. For these people who are trying to understand why. And the main reason is probably that the people that were building, the architects and average building in Sicily at that time, were not just Arab, but they were also Berber from North Africa. And at that time, as they do also nowadays, they were using, for example, in Iran, they were doing until probably, I think, 70 years ago. Now they still use it to restore the whole building. They were using hand-cooked brick. And hand-cooked brick, time by time, they just disappear if you don't restore them. Well, we probably lost all of this architecture for that. Another reason was that probably the buildings were transformed after. For this, maybe the mosque, they didn't collapse, but they were transformed in church. But it's very, very difficult to understand exactly now what it was, because each ages added something. But what we have from that time is a lot of different things. For example, we have Ibn Hamdis. It was the most important poet from the Arabic time, and Ibn Hamdis was an interesting poet that was speaking and writing a lot about how he was missing Sicily, because he was living exactly in the time where he had to, sorry, this is Ballarò Market, I go too much. Okay, it was this one. He was celebrating the beauty of Sicily that he just left, because he was living there in the period where the Christians, the Norman, did a war against the Muslims to took back the island. And for this he was in exile. A lot of his poetry is about exile, and is so full of love about Sicily that still now it's very interesting. He's one of the most famous poets in Sicily. People love him, they especially, not everyone knows him, but the cultivated people from Sicily, they think Ibn Hamdis is one of the most important poets from Sicily. We have also what we say a kind of life culture that is still there. For example, in the market. We have Ballarò. Ballarò is this is one of the oldest souk in the island. Is this one, and in this market, people generally they sing for selling their products. They advertise their products singing, and this market, the name is probably coming from a word, Arabic word that was balahara. That was, I don't know, probably they say it was something with light or mirrors, but there's a lot of different thinking about, but they generally people accept that is probably an Arabic origin name. And something that is funny, I don't know if you know couscous. Couscous, everyone will think is from Tunisia, is from Morocco. But the International Festival of Couscous, we do it in Sicily. Because couscous is one of the things that the Arab gave to Sicily, and is the most important local food in Trapani region, that is the southern part of Sicily, and it was the first region where the people came from Tunisia. And still now is the region in Italy with the highest Muslim population in Trapani area. It's new population, but as it's very near to Tunisia, is one of the most important ones. And it's one of the few places in Europe where you can see muezzin singing. That is not something you will find usually. This is the Couscous Fest that we do there. And something is happening with the computer. Okay. This is also something that would sound very strange, but in Italy, in south of Italy, in Sicily, we use an Arab word for the most important wine we have, and in this region. And this wine, the name is 𝒓𝒄𝒍𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒄, and it's a sweet wine, and the name came from 𝒓𝒄, that was the sweet resin and the grape when it's dry, and the wine that maybe Jewish and Christian were drinking during Muslim caliphates. This is the wine, and one of the things that is also interesting is that we had a common language that was formed during centuries for the people that were traders. And this language was a mix between Italians from the time, because Italian is a new language. For instance, at the time it would be Genoa dialect, Sicilian dialect, Amalfi dialect, with Arabic words and French words. And it was something that all the traders, people that were actually working on boats, could understand each other. It was an easy way to. And we have still now some of these words. For example, in Sicily, the fishing of tuna has a cultural importance that is not just fishing. There's a lot of legend behind this, a lot of religious things behind that. The head of the fisherman name is the Rais, like the Rais in Arabic, the boss, the president, the important, yeah. And this is the fishing, how they were doing. They are still doing now, but it's now with modern boats it's disappearing. And irrigation, agricultural also was very important during Arab times. They give us, for example, orange, probably lemon, but this is not sure because some people say we already have it. And a lot of agricultural hydro architecture. For example, Canat in Palermo, they are still working. For instance, we have the water system still now working in part from the Arab time. Citrus, I will try to go a little bit in the food. We have a lot of food. For example, when you found fish with nuts and resin grapes, these generally have some Arabic or Islamic influence, or Jewish one. I will go a little bit further. Canat, I did it. This is the Canat in Palermo, working now. This is some historians that were speaking about the time and geography, about the Islamic population of Palermo and Sicily. And, okay, I will change now the second period. What we have in Sicily now is a lot of Arabic Norman architecture. For this, what people generally think when they go to Sicily and they think they are looking for Arab architecture is not the Arab architecture during the Caliphate, because as I told you, it disappeared. It's mostly Arabic normal architecture. And maybe as an architect, you could think when you will see it, that it's not really Arabic for an Arab maybe, or it's not really Islamic architecture for someone living in an Islamic country. And this is because generally it was a period where people use the influence and they mix up everything. The result is a mixture of Gothic and Arabic architecture. And this mix of Gothic, Romance and Arabic architecture created what we call, and Byzantine, a lot of Byzantine architecture, created what we call Arab Norman architecture. Then now it's protected by UNESCO in Italy. And why we have this during the period where the Christian, the Norman, did a war against the caliphates and actually took back Sicily from the caliphs. And this is a very interesting question. It happened also in the first time in Spain, in the first part of the Reconquista. And in these first 200 years, generally the Norman people were thinking actually that the Islamic way of life was much more interesting than the one from North of Europe. For instance, they actually asked to the Muslim people to don't leave the island. And for this, for over 200 years, the people were mixed. And they asked them to build their own palace and their own church. For this, we have a lot of architecture that is interesting, also because maybe in the Islamic world would not be possible. For example, this one. This is the main church, of what was the royal palace of Palermo, and what it is now the parliament of Palermo, is the parliament of the region. What is the down part is very Byzantine. The upper part is Muqarnas. It can be in Iran, it can be here, it can be anywhere in the Islamic world. For this, you have two different things. You have mosaic, very figurative mosaic, something you would never have in a mosque. Maybe just in Hagia Sophia, because you have mix between mosaic from Christian time in Istanbul and the later Islamic architecture, and the Muqarnas hub. But what is even more interesting is that the Muqarnas are painted. So you have, for example, this is a belly dancer, and the people painting it were Arab, okay? But as they were painting in a church, there was no problem for figurative. And this will be around 1200 after Jesus Christ. And for example, here we have a palm with two people playing music, drinking, and soldiers, I think. For this, this is the Giza. Giza was one of the palace of pleasure, one of the bag of the king. Which now is what it is now. For sure, what the garden you see in front now, this is a modern reconstruction. Okay, the Islamic kind garden. It was like that before, but this is more than they remedied. The palace behind is original, and inside you will see exactly the same things. Upper part, very Islamic. The fountain, this one is original, very Islamic. In the middle, you have, in the up, some Byzantine art. Down, some frescoes from, I think, 1600, which is like at least 400 years later. Okay, they just add on the monuments. But you see, the upper part, this could be in any mosque in Cairo, or in any buildings, or in Iran. It changed maybe the stones they use for, but the colors, but more or less is not different. Okay, this is really interesting. This is a tombstone. This tombstone is the tombstone of a mother, the mother of a priest. And this priest decided when the mother passed away to write in the tombstone in the 4 languages that people were using at the time in the island. So you have Arabic, you have Hebrew, you have Greek and Latin. This is another bag, another palace for pleasure, and it was built in 1180, and now is not very well preserved. For this, they lost completely the garden, and still I think the municipality could maybe do some better job for the garden around, but inshallah they will do it. And this was how it was probably. It's a reconstruction. We still have the small building there, but now they built a lot of building in the middle, because in 1960, 1970 in Palermo there was a lot of bad architecture, which they built all around, and this is what it is now, the small one. But you have bad buildings are all around. Okay, this is inside. The roof has collapsed. But you can see some part of the decoration. There is a fountain in the middle, but I couldn't find any photo. The fountain has the shape of an Islamic star, and but I don't know why it's very difficult to find an internet photo. Okay, this is also very interesting. The photo is terrible, but it's some Kufic inscription. But the Kufic inscription is from the same building. It's just telling, I am the king of this place, but he's the Christian king. Okay? But he asked it to the Arabic people working with him, for him to write it in Kufic. But this is very interesting that in his own palace, he was not writing in Latin and with European letters, but he was writing in Arabic. He was saying, in the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, beware, hear, stop and look. You will see the noble chamber of the noble among kings of all earth, William II, Christian king. There is no castle worth of him. Eternal praise be to God. May he keep him fulfill and grant him blessing throughout his life. Okay, this is a church, La Martorana. Also this church, we have a mix of things. The red color they had last centuries, okay? It was not red before probably, but for this we have very, very different kind of style. We have Gothic, some Arabic influence style, and also Baroque that were had later, okay? And inside is very Byzantine. Inside is full of mosaics. But this building, for example, the domes like that, in our way of thinking, were very influenced by Islamic architecture, for example. You don't have domes like that in a lot of places around in Europe. The door is an original door from Syria, from that time. This is another church, San Giovanni agli Eremiti, and same kind of domes, and also the same kind of mix. This is the cathedral. Cathedral of Palermo also is like a place where they had things in centuries. Okay, probably it was the same place of the mosque, the main mosque of Palermo. We don't know exactly if what we see now it has some remains of the mosque or they just built it completely new. But for sure, if you see the down part and you forgot about the upper part, is very, very Islamic style. Just the upper part you will see is very Baroque, and they have things in or also Gothic. There is a page of Quran in one of the columns of the church. Now also the photo is very bad, but you can see there. And it's so strange, you have, in the middle of the most important church of the city, you have a page of Quran. This is the Cathedral of Monreale. This is outside of Palermo. It's one of the most important churches in Sicily. This part is also something that something that for us is really very representative of the Arabic Norman architecture. Where you have this mix of Gothic and Arabic arch, but also you have this use of mosaic of stone. I forgot to add a photo here, but maybe if we have time I will show it later on internet. But we have a lot of this, we call it cosmatesche also, in the floor. We had a lot of mosaic on the floor that are done with geometric patterns, done in small pieces of mosaic. And this is, we call it Italian cosmatesche from the Fratelli Cosma, but it has also some influence about these geometric mosaics that you can find in Byzantine and Eastern world. This is the Cathedral of Cefalù, that also is considered a masterpiece of the Arabic Norman one. And I will try to go a little bit faster. This is Ali Drisi, that was an historian that was writing for the Norman king about Sicily. And okay, this is the modern mosque of Palermo. This is an interesting thing because in Palermo, the Catholic Church decided that as the main church in Palermo was probably before a mosque, or anyway was in the place of the mosque, and as in Palermo all the churches sometimes became mosque and after they became church again, so the church gave a whole church to make the mosque inside. Because the main mosque of Palermo now is inside of a church. It's an old church that now is not anymore a church but became the mosque. And also something that is nice in Palermo, in some area of Palermo, you will find the names of the streets that are right in Arabic, in Hebrew, and in Italian, just to remember the three populations that were living together in the highland. What we still have now also about this, we have some legends, for example, that are very interesting. One of these legends is this one, what we call the head of the Moro. Moro in local language, it was the people from the Arab world. Also in Venice, they would call them Moro. And this is a story of a lady from Palermo that fell in love with an Arab, and that suddenly she discovered that he was leaving the highland, and he had already a family in North Africa. But you see, he had a wife and kids, and she became very jealous, and she decided to kill him. During the night, he cut the head, and she put she dried the head, and she grew some basil inside. Basil was for worship. And the people outside saw this basil growing in head, and from that we had this tradition to have the vases with the shape of this couple that was actually that fell in love. But it's the symbol of Sicily. One of the most important symbols of Sicily is remembering this love between this couple, and the revenge of the woman when she discovered that the man had already a wife. I quickly say just this before passing through the other things. All these words in Sicily disappear when the Spanish arrived. But also, maybe I will tell you after the castle, because we have another period where still we have Muslim and Christian living together in the same kingdom, and after I will tell you when this word just ended. For this, we had a small emirate in Bari. Okay, this Bari is in south of Italy, in Puglia. It's not an island. It's the east part of south. It's the east southern region of Italy. This emirate was very short, just for some decades, but it left also some architecture. For example, this kind of towns. You will find a lot of this similar architecture in Syria or in Lebanon and in Palestine. This for two different reasons. Because not just because of the Muslim that came to south of Italy, but also for the Crusaders. Because the Crusaders were from north of Europe, were arriving to this city Bari, and from the Bari were going to Syria. For this, if you go to Syria in the coast, for example, the city of Tartus, especially Tartus, but also Tripoli in Lebanon, most of the buildings or the castles are mix of Arabic and Crusader architecture. For this, for an Italian, I was in Syria in the last 5-6 years, like 4 times, and it was really surprising how the architecture for me is exactly the same, because there is a lot of Gothic European art and a lot of own Islamic traditional art. The narrow road you will have that are very narrow and things is very typical from all the villages in Mediterranean. You can go in Tunisia or you can go in south of Italy, you will have the same kind of roads. Very narrow and very like a souk, you can lose yourself. And if you are not from there, you will not know the way. And this was a way to be sure that the enemy would get lost inside of the city. Okay, this is Frederick II. Frederick II was one of the most important imperator from the Norman. He was the only one that during Crusader didn't fight the Islamic, but he went there and he found an agreement with the Caliph. And for this, the Pope was very angry with him. Actually, the Pope decided that he was out of the Catholic Church because he found an agreement with the Caliph to have the chance for the Christian to go there in pilgrim to Jerusalem without doing a war. And for this, it was for us nowadays one of the most interesting person we had at the time. This was his own castle, and this castle had a lot of influence. It was a hunting castle, and he has a lot of influence from the hunting culture that people used to have in Middle East at the time. And also about geometry. There is a lot of geometry, a lot of maths things that at the time were Arabic things, not much more European things. If you go in Syria, you will see a lot of castles that could have similar influence, for example. He has also an interesting story because he was the last king of a Muslim population in Italy. And this is exactly how it ended, because he was the last one that used to have a Muslim population there. But as he was the king of Sicily and the south of Italy and some part in North Europe. And but as the Muslim people in Sicily tried to do some revolt, he decided to oblige them to move from Sicily to Puglia. So this was this region I was speaking before. And why he decided to do this? Because in Sicily there were too many people, too powerful. But moving them to near his palace in Puglia, it was a way to control them. For this, somehow, he was a king that was very in love with Islamic culture, but he was also the one that obliged somehow the Muslim to leave from Sicily and go to another region in Italy, but to be more controlled because he was afraid. But still, in this period, you had mixed population. It ended completely when the Spanish became also the king of south of Italy. And in that time, in exactly the same moment where the Spanish kings, they asked to all the Muslim and Jewish to leave in 1400 in Spain, they asked to the Muslim and the Jewish in Italy to leave. This was exactly the last moment where south of Italy was in the same cultural background than North Africa and traders of Napoli. Okay, Napoli was in the hand of Byzantine at the time, the coast. What the Romans were calling the barbarian, okay, had the Longobardi, had the hills and the mountain near the city. For the Byzantine just have the coast, but the mountain were in the hand of the ex-old barbarian that they became actually Romans somehow, new Romans, but coming from north of Europe, and we call him Longobardi. We call them, sorry. But Amalfi was a very, very small town, what we call now Amalfi Coast. Amalfi Coast nowadays is very popular for tourism, but in Middle Age, the Amalfi Coast was with Pisa, Venice, and Genoa was what we call the four republics that were trading on the sea. Okay, they were very, very rich, very important for their navy, and they were trading especially with all the Arabic, the caliphates, the Turkish, and I think also indirectly with the Arabs, with India, but indirectly through the Arabs and the Turkey. In that case, it's a different history. We had an architecture that is influenced by Arab, but we never had any political influence about the Arab. For this, it was something through merchants. This is an example, for example. This for us is a typical mixture between Gothic and Arabic architecture. Not just the shape of the first shape of the arch, but also how the geometry you are up to of the arch, how they cross. This is very hypnotical. And this kind of geometry and hypnotical kind of geometry that you can have, for example, in geometry in mosques. For example, this is the main cluster of the Cathedral of Amalfi. And you see the dome. This is typical for all the houses in south of Italy, but this kind of domes, that was the typical, it was made because it was keeping the house fresher, cooler. But it's the same kind of dome you will find in a lot of places in North Africa or even in Iran. And also the use of now in the photo is not clear, but I will show you another photo, the use of ceramic on the mosaic of ceramic is something that we took probably from Middle East or from North Africa. This kind of geometry and ceramic mosaic. Okay, this is Villa Rufolo. It's one of the most important villas in Ravello, still in the Amalfi Coast. You have to imagine that this part, that is what interests us, the one with the arches, is the original part, and it was like like in a mirror. You have the third part; they were all the same, but after they had, because during the times the house became probably less rich. And to have all these windows was not good for in winter time because it was too much. It was too cold, and probably they cover the arches. But generally, you had the arches to all the four part of the yard and a pool in the middle. For this, you had the typical idea of the water, the pool in the middle of the yard, and the arch to make cooler in summertime. Okay. You can see you have also the geometry, hypnotical kind of geometry, that is also very, very typical from that period. This is an Islamic hammam, a bath. In that region, in the Amalfi Coast, there are maybe two that are conserved. One is actually now a house with someone living inside. Okay, this is the houses you will have. For example, this is Praiano, still in the Amalfi Coast. You will see the house have the domes, always is white houses with domes. Now a lot of the domes are disappearing because people, they make other floors, and they should not, but unluckily they do. And I cry all the time. And okay, this is different. This is coming back to the Norman. The Norman also used to have some. They used to have some part of their kingdom that was in the north of Napoli, in the city of Aversa and Caserta. This is north of Napoli. For example, this is Caserta Vecchia, and you can see this is Gothic plus sometimes some influence in the Arab architecture, but is more. In this case, you have more Gothic and a little bit less Arab influence. But for example, here you have again the geometry. This is Aversa, the arches and geometry. And this is exactly what we call the balance between Gothic, Roman and Islamic influence. Okay, it's loading. Let's see what. Okay. Okay, this I was wrong. Maybe, no, this is still Caserta. Sorry, it's not Aversa. This is Aversa, where you have the arch game, and this is the bell tower of a town in Gaeta that is now in Lazio, but once was in Campania region in the Kingdom of South. And here also. Let's see what's open. Okay, here you have the ceramic. Okay, look the tiles, the blue tiles. It can be in Iran. It's exactly the turquoise generally you found in Iran. And in the ceramic, for example, a lot of the ceramic in south of Italy are influenced by the Islamic world. It's not a case that the producer of ceramic in Italy generally are in south. I will try to go a little bit quicker. Okay, now we go to Venice. Venice is the last part of the history because Venice started in Middle Age, exactly as Amalfi, or Pisa, or Genoa, as a republic for traders. But it became the most powerful one, and it was the last one to collapse. With the architecture in Venice, influenced by the Islamic architecture, is an architecture that lasts more centuries. For this, we can say that we had it until probably, even in the house of 100 years ago, probably still there was some kind of influence behind sometimes. And one of the main, this is the Cathedral of Palermo. It has a mixture between Byzantine style and some kind of also Islamic influence. In that case, it's quite unique. You will not find any church like that in any other cities outside of Venice and the Republic of Venice in Italy. But in the Republic of Venice, yes, maybe yes. But with this shape, for us, it's something really very different from what usually we have outside of the Republic of Venice. Imagine also that the Republic of Venice was not just what it is the east north of Italy now, but is also what now is the coast of Croatia and Slovenia and part of the coast of what is now the small part of Bosnia, also in the coast. And Venice used to have a very strange relationship with the Ottoman. Sometimes they were fighting them, sometimes they were very friendly with them. For this it was kind of love and hate, okay? From both sides probably, but they really influence a lot one to the other. And Venice used to have some, like Genova Republic, some headquarters in Istanbul for the traders. Generally, the most, but this is inside of the church. Inside is really very Byzantine. You can see from the mosaic and the colors. But if you see the mosaics, for example, inside of the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, okay, the mosaic of the Umayyad mosques in Damascus are very influenced by the Byzantine one. The Byzantine one. The only difference that in the Umayyad Mosque you have just architecture and tree, but you don't have people. But somehow, if you go to the Umayyad Mosque and you go to Venice, in the main church of San Marco, you will find some kind of relationship. More similar to, so there is more a relationship with Damascus from inside maybe, that, or to Constantinople than Paris, I would say. Okay, the other thing is the shape of the windows. Okay, again we have this mix of Gothic and Arabic kind of style, very open, very full of air. For this is really the own way how the Venice people was reinventing this. If you go to Beirut, I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure if the houses in Beirut are similar to the one in Venice with the 3 windows, because these windows are from the Arab origin and Venice is influenced for, or I'm not sure if Beirut took this from Venice. This really, I'm honest, I really don't have any idea. But I always found very interesting to see how the modern architecture from Beirut in 19th centuries, for example, the houses with the 3 windows that you see in Beirut are very, very, very similar to the one in Venice. It would be interesting to understand who started. So sometimes maybe it doesn't have sense, I think, because people just share and you don't know exactly who started before and who did it later. But generally, in Venice was very famous for books. For this, they were very interested in everything about medicine, about Arab maths, and anything was coming from that world. I'm sure I didn't say initially when I started, but I'm pretty sure that everyone already knows. For this is not something that I was supposed to say, but when we speak about philosophy in Europe, about the classical Greek philosophy, generally in Europe, mostly of them we have through the books from the Arabs, because in Middle Age a lot of books were just destroyed. Christians were not so active in copying the book about the Greek philosophy. For this, generally during the first 2 caliphates, we have to thank them because they actually copied a lot of books that the church was not doing at the time. Okay, what we have in Venice that is very also influenced by the Islamic culture is the glass culture, for example. Venice is very famous for the Murano glass. Murano glass were influenced by Syrian, and for sure Roman used to have a very important culture of glass too. If you go to, it's the same things of before. You don't know exactly who started. If you see the Roman glass, Syria was part of Roman Empire. You will never know if they were the Syrian or the Roman who started that. But for sure, we are sure that the Greek, or the Venice artisan were asking to the Arabic and Turkish artisan to help them how to renovate the glass technique. For this was part of the what we call influence in Venice. We have again the fish with the raisins and the nuts, and very similar to the one we have in Sicily, but this is far north. Okay, this is the mori. Also in Venice we have the mori, exactly as in Napoli. In Sicily. And in this case, they call them the mori, but they're not shaped as Arab. They call just because it's bronze, and for its, and the people in the city thinks they are good luck, because the mori are protecting somehow the city. But we have also the mori in architecture, for example. In a lot of houses, you can find them around. And I would like to finish with them because it's exactly the balance about the influence between the Islamic culture and in Italy is exactly we can use the mori, for example, to explain them. It was a balance of love and fear, love and war. For this, the people loved the statues they were putting in the houses. Is for good luck. They were trading with them. They were copying the architecture. But in some moments, we had division, wars maybe, especially when religions were fighting. And in the other moment, there was this kind of attraction, very, very strong attraction. And I think this is exactly the balance that art did it for a lot of centuries. But coming to again to how I started, I would like to finish telling that generally, if you ask me, one of the effort that I think the people that study the Islamic culture and also the different European kingdoms and culture in general should do is to try to don't think too much in a political way, because when we think we are separate, it's more or less fiction, because I can say that I'm not separate even to a Chinese because we are both human beings. But for more than from when Islam started and from when Christianity started and from Hebrew region started, the region were always the same. We are being always connected. And for this we are like cousins that sometimes like each other, sometimes they fight in a very bad way, and sometimes you remember that we are cousin and family. And I would like to finish with this.
Thank you, Mr. Luca.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure is. But for example, if you likely in Italy in the last, I would say, 100 years or something, there was a really long rediscover about the influence in different fields. It took time, and I think it was most in the moment that Italy became a united country, because Italy became a united country just 160, 70 years ago. Being dyslexic, I don't remember exactly the number of years is funny, but it's like that in life sometimes. For this, anyway, became a country in Rome became the capital in 875, and Italy became a country in 10 years before. And for this 865, I'm not wrong. And before of that, the Catholic Church used to have a lot of power, for example, in the Kingdom of Rome, and in other cities. For this, the Islamic influence in the culture was something that was not so remembered by the Catholic Church at the time. But when Italy became a country, we had a separation between church and religion, and there was a lot of rediscovering of it. For example, if you Sicilian people, they think that the best period of their own history was probably the Greek time and the Arabic time. And for this, now we have a lot of different studies and different books about different fields. For you see, from anything, from architecture point of view, from human perspective, food, way of urbanism, for example, how the master plan of the city, for example, in the Roman time were very like geometric and with a main road and the other road. During Middle Age, especially in South, they became really very similar to what we have in Morocco or in Tunisia. Very narrow road and never straight, but like that, because maybe this was easier to, for example, to fight enemies. You could throw out things from windows, and people were obliged to do like that and never straight. For this, we have even a different urbanism of the city that are different. So I'm not sure if I'm answering you, but what I want to say is that you have a lot of studies that nowadays in different fields are studying this, and this is thanks the fact that in the last 150 years, people start to saw their Muslim and Mediterranean connection in a good way. But with the Spanish, what happened that what before was one sea, the Mediterranean, with people trading, it became the border with the enemy. Okay, first imagine you are in Napoli, in Italy, you're just trading with South, you go to Tunisia, more or less is the same sea, and suddenly the Spanish arrived and said, okay, now the center for us is South America, and the Arabs, they became the people that were kidnapping people to become slave in the mentality of people, okay? But there was a shift that was very strong in that moment, and that it was like for 300 years, and I think also things change with colonization, because for sure colonization was a horrible thing, but also mix again people even if they didn't want it. Because for example, 100 years ago, people don't remember it, but the Italian people were migrating a lot, and can you guess one of the countries where the Italian people were migrating a lot? Libya, Tunisia, Egypt. For this, the Italian poor people were migrating in those countries in North Africa because they were thinking that they were richer, and it was a good place to migrate. For this, colonization is not just an history of political imperialism, but it's also an history of poor people migrating in a country that they were feeling they were richer. And for this, somehow they mix again, even under a bad political way of doing it. For this, in this moment, they start to have again studies. Yeah, this actually is the other side of what we did today, because not just architecture and words became similar, but festivities. I would just finish saying that generally in Italy, sometimes I play a game, I take some photos from Iran and some photos from Italy, and I don't tell to the people that some of the photos are from Italy. And generally I'm speaking about Iran, because my grandmother was Iranian, so I go there each year. And just after a bit I told them, by the way, this is not Iran. And people have a lot of, they are surprised initially. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.